Hi everyone, and welcome to today's training on the SEAL resource sharing system. I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to attend. I really appreciate it. I'm Kelsey Milner, resource sharing and cataloging librarian at the Southeastern Library Resources Council. This is a brief overview of what I will be covering today. I have a brief PowerPoint introducing SEAL and talking a bit about how it works. Then I will be doing some live demonstrations in SEAL on various aspects of the system, including creating an account, searching, placing requests, lending items, and generating statistics. Afterwards, I'm going to be touching briefly on our regional guidelines that we have for interlibrary loan, as well as a few copyright basics. I know it looks like a lot, but I will be pointing you towards some resources such as our manual and training videos, which can be really helpful if you ever need a reminder of anything that I go over today. Just to provide a little bit of context, SEAL has been around now for almost 20 years. It is a free system that connects libraries of all types across the Southeastern New York region, allowing them to easily share resources outside of their home system. Southeastern is a membership organization serving libraries of all types in the 8 counties listed at the right. Any library in this region can participate in SEAL. And we are one of 9 library resources councils in this state, each one representing a different region. Collectively, these councils are known as the Empire State Library Network. The Southeastern region is specifically comprised of 8 unique library systems. These include the 5 school library systems, which are Dutchess, Orange Ulster, Rockland, Sullivan, and Ulster. There are the 2 public library systems, Mid-Hudson and Ramapo Catskill. And then we have what we refer to as the Southeastern system, and this includes academic, hospital, and special libraries as members. Right now we have a total of about 173 of these libraries participating in SEAL. So how does SEAL work? Users first search our Union catalog, which pulls live item records from libraries across the region. Once you locate a specific item, you can choose a potential lender from a list of participating SEAL libraries. An email will be generated to them asking if they are able to lend the item. I'm going to cover this process in our demo so you can get a good sense of how it all works. SEAL is a point-to-point ILL system. That means if a library is unable to fill your request, you will have to submit a new one to a different library. And SEAL has many useful features, including a directory of participating libraries, the ability to update item statuses, a statistics tool, and borrowing and lending request histories. There are a variety of items you can get through SEAL, though most commonly people use it for book loans. You can also request items such as CDs, DVDs, and audiobooks, though some libraries choose not to lend these due to their delicate nature. Our directory of participating libraries, which I'm going to be discussing shortly, has a list of all the item types each library is willing and able to loan. There's also an option in SEAL to request journal articles. And there are some things you probably won't be able to get through SEAL. This includes ebooks, which often aren't allowed to be lent due to vendor stipulations. It might also be a challenge to receive reference, archival, or special collections materials. There are a lot of different delivery methods for items borrowed through SEAL, and these options depend both on your library and the library that you're delivering the item to. For example, Mid-Hudson and RCLS libraries can send materials back and forth using their couriers, which meet twice a week to exchange items. And RCLS and Mid-Hudson both have routing slips available, which you can use to send items through the system courier. Several libraries using SEAL are also participants in something called Empire Library Delivery, a statewide delivery service that's managed by the 9 library councils. SEAL libraries that are members of Empire Library Delivery can use the service to send items to other member libraries, and there's a roster on the Empire Library Delivery website, esln.org, which allows you to search and see if another library is also participating. RCLS and Mid-Hudson are both members, in addition to several of our academic libraries that are using SEAL. And if you can't use the system couriers or Empire Library Delivery, then you would use typical shipping methods such as UPS, USPS, FedEx, and this is going to be the most common method when delivering to and from school and special libraries. Okay, if all went well, you should be seeing my screen now. So the first thing that I'm going to touch on in the Seal system is creating and managing your account. And for today's webinar, I'm just going to do a demonstration of creating an account. So don't stress if you can't remember each of these steps when you do it on your own. I'm going to point you towards some great resources that can help. And you can also call or email me, and I would be happy to walk with you through the process. Users can make an individual account with their own personal information, so multiple people at your library can actually have their own separate Seal account, and these will all be linked together under your library. So once you're ready to create your account, the first step is to click Staff Login, located at the top right hand of the Seal page. And from there, choose the option Create New Account. You'll see a section here for a registration code. We try to keep this code secret just because it allows us to keep track of all registering libraries and ensure that everyone has gone through and received training. So if anyone asks you, although I'm not sure why they would, please don't tell. Okay, so after you've entered the registration code, you can choose your own username. I would recommend using your first initial and last name, or your email address, or just something that you're definitely going to remember. And then you can fill in the rest of your contact information, including your email, name, institution, work address, and phone number. You can also choose to include your OCLC or Library of Congress codes. And then the last step would be to choose your home library system from this drop-down menu. And once you've finished filling in your basic account information, you can read and accept our terms and conditions of use. These are fairly basic. We ask that everyone keep their contact information current and agree to certain things like being willing to share their materials, taking responsibility for any items that are borrowed, and understanding any copyright limitations when requesting articles. So if these are agreeable to you, you would click Create New Account, and you will receive an email in a day or two from the address noc@sunnylark.org confirming your account. It will include a link for you to set your password. And then, so once you have your login information, the fun starts. You can now place and receive requests in Seal. So to log in initially, you would go back to Staff Login and put in your username and password in this section. If you ever forget or need to reset your password, you can do this by hitting Request New Password. This will generate a link to the email that we have on file for you, allowing you to go ahead and change it. Once you log into Seal, your account will display with your institution's information and a few key account options. The first thing I want to touch on here is the library lending profile. This is where you can record your library's profile and contact information, and it's important to keep this information as up to date as possible. And while you can create an account using your personal email, the email located inside your lending profile, right here, should be the same for all the Seal users at your library. And this is the email that all the Seal requests will be sent to. There are a lot of different ways you can set this up using one library ILL email. At Southeastern, for example, we use a Google group, which has an email for ILL. So any emails that are received at that address are automatically forwarded to several different staff members. There's also an option in your lending profile to suspend lending temporarily. When lending is on, this option will be sent to no. But if your library is ever closed for a period of time, or you're moving, or the ILL staff is on vacation somewhere fun, you can turn off lending by setting your suspend status to yes. And once it's set to yes, you won't receive any ILL requests. You can determine the date the account will be active again, and it will automatically update. This profile is also where libraries can indicate the types of materials they are willing and able to loan. So if you specify that you can't loan a particular item type, you shouldn't receive any ILO requests for them. And if you make any changes on this page, just click Submit before navigating away. If you ever need to change your personal information, such as your username or password, you can do so by hitting the Edit button in your account, and you can change those right here. This screen also allows you to filter your own system when you're making Seal requests, and that can ensure that you don't accidentally request something that's in your own library system, like if you're a public library or something like that. So if you make any changes to this page, just hit Save before closing. Your account is also where you can see both the interlibrary loan requests that you've placed and the ones you've received from other libraries. If you click on See All Requests Placed by Your Library, it will take you to a chronological listing of all the borrowing requests that you've placed, and it starts with the most recent one. Every request comes with a unique ILL number, and your request history will also record the bibliographic information of the book, the item type, who you've requested it from, as well as the due date and shipping method for the item. There's also an action tab on the far right, which manages request updates. And these status updates were added last summer, and they're not mandatory, but they're suggested as good practice. They let the other person in your ILL transaction know the state of their materials, and they also provide an additional way for you to track your items in addition to your ILS, or if you use spreadsheets or anything else like that. So using this action tab, borrowers are able to cancel requests and receive, renew, and return items. And so you can kind of see some of the different options here. And I will talk a little bit more about the status updates when I work through a sample request. You can locate a specific request by searching using the ILL number. It's assigned in the search bar. You can also search by destination, which would be the lender for the item. Using the search options along the top of the screen, you can sort your requests by their fill status. So if I wanted to see all my requests that were filled, I could click yes, and then update. The process is similar if you would like to see a request history of all the items that you've lent to other libraries. Just head back to this account menu and select See All Requests Received by Your Library. You can sort and search for specific requests in the same way. You can see here that my action options are different. Lenders can use this action tab to fill or decline requests. They can edit due dates. They can approve or deny renewals, and they can check in items. So there are some instances where you might need to search for the contact information of a specific library, and you can actually find all that information in our SEAL directory, which is linked on the bottom right hand of the homepage. The directory lists all the participating SEAL libraries in alphabetical order. To find a specific library, you can search by the library's name, but you can also narrow down by library system. This can be useful if you're ever unsure whether a specific library is in your system or not. So let's say for this example that I needed to contact Southeastern. So when I search, it'll display the address, phone number, and email of the organizations. It will also list the system the library belongs to, and that can be really helpful when you're trying to determine your shipping method. You can also see what types of materials each library is loaning and whether they're currently accepting requests. And if you click on this email address that's provided, it'll automatically open a blank message addressed to the library. Now on to simple and advanced searching in the SEAL catalog. So as you can see, the search bar is visible at the top of the site, and this is actually anyone, even your patrons, can search this catalog without being logged in. You can't place a request without being logged in, but you can use it to search. The SEAL catalog can be a little quirky. It works through a protocol called Z39.50, and that facilitates the searching and retrieving of information across library catalogs. So when you enter a search string, the catalog will actually perform a live search to pull matching records from libraries in the region. And the system will automatically overlay matching records, and that allows you to see a list of each library that owns it. And it'll also bring in the current availability status that's affiliated with the item. So it'll say if it's available, if it's checked out, if it's on hold, and things like that. So in the search bar, you can search using a variety of elements, including title, author, ISBN, or keywords. And you can do both simple queries and more complex ones that use Boolean operators like and or. And you can also use quotation marks if you want to indicate that you're searching for a specific phrase. I just want to work through a few examples to kind of show how the catalog works and how your search results can change by using different search queries. And there's no right or wrong way to search SEAL, but since it is searching so many records at once, it is best to always try and be as specific as possible. That's going to really help you get to the item you're looking for quickly. So just keep an eye out on these different search terms that I try to see how they kind of change the results that we receive. So for example, let's say someone is looking for the children's book Hudson by Frances Dunwell. One option would be to do a simple keyword search using Hudson, which I've definitely done before. So a keyword search will look at the entirety of the item's record for matching words. And for that reason, this search did not go out all to have thousands of hits back. And the catalog, as you can see, is kind of still plugging away. And that's because it was also searching subject headings, it was searching summaries, and just everything that was in the record. So that wasn't specific enough. We could possibly narrow it down by indicating that the word Hudson must be a part of the book's title. And the catalog actually does have a way that you can search by certain elements, including title, author, or subject. So if you type in TI equals, it'll indicate that you want to only search the title field of a record, whereas AU equals author and SU equals subject. So let's try searching TI equals. This has helped a little bit, but we still have a lot of results to work through. There's just too many books around here with the word Hudson in the title. One of my favorite shortcuts, which can sometimes help to limit things down, is to create a keyword search that will actually combine different elements from the title and author. So let's try combining the phrase Hudson from the title with the author's last name, Dunwell. This forces the catalog to only return results that have both of these words somewhere in the record. And when I do this, our list becomes way more manageable, and it's actually our first result. However, ISBN is the easiest, and I would recommend using that to search, especially if you know exactly what edition of a book you need. And if I try searching with the ISBN, the book comes up as the only result, and it's going to be separated out into the print book and the ebook because they're different formats, so the catalog doesn't overlay those records since they are different. But you can also just skip simple search altogether and head straight to the advanced search, which is located at the top right hand of the search screen. And advanced search is great because it allows users to generate an even more specific request by creating complex queries. You can use multiple terms at once, including keywords, title, author, subject, and ISBN. So I'm just going to try using the publishing date as a keyword, and then put the title and author in the different search bars. So you can actually see that as I type those in, the query appears at the top of the page or the bottom of the page. And this is really helpful because you can see exactly what the system is going to be searching for. And you can actually create these complex search strings on your own and put them into the main search bar. I just find that it's easier to come to advanced search because then you can get the formatting exactly right by typing it in here. So this search, much like our ISBN search, was really good. It really just got exactly the book that we needed and separated it out by format again. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about navigating the SEAL search results page. So at the top right of the page, we have options for help, advanced search, and search history. Clicking help will bring you to a page that provides a little more information on searching and how you can actually construct your search queries. And it also talks a little bit about how the searching works in this catalog. And if you click on search history, it'll list all the previous search strings that you've tried. So if you wanted to try one of those again, you can just click on it and it'll revert to your old search. There's also options right here to sort your results by things like relevance, title, and date. And on the left-hand side, there's facets, which can further limit down your results. So you can choose a particular item type or a source if you want to see the results just from a specific library or library system. You can also limit down by subject, which is displayed as a word cloud. And just basically the larger the word, the more items that have that subject. And that's kind of the same with the author. So if you narrow down by format or by a facet, it'll actually change the search string that's visible under the bar. So once I clicked books, now format has a highlighted all and the word books. So if you ever want to move backwards and undo your limiting, you can just hit the highlight it all and it'll revert back. So these icons, they indicate format, and a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. But if you hover over the format icon, it'll also tell you which libraries actually have that item available. And if you click on a specific title, let's find one that's got a lot of records attached to it. So once you click on it, it'll actually open up and display the bibliographic information of the book and also the sources that you have to choose from. And if you need to, you can actually look at an item directly in its individual catalog. If you click on the link, it'll open it up. And if you're a nerd like me, you might be excited to see that you can also view the entire MARC record of an item. This has all the title, author, and publication details of the book, and that can be useful if you're trying to verify maybe like a specific edition of a book or something like that. And as I mentioned before, it'll bring in the availability. This dash indicates that it's available. One really important thing to keep in mind is that not all of the libraries on the screen are actually SEAL participants, at least not yet. The catalog serves kind of a dual purpose as also being a union catalog for the region. So we do have results that aren't SEAL participants because it is serving both of those purposes. But once you actually get to the next screen, the requesting screen, you'll only be able to choose libraries from a drop-down list of SEAL participants. So you can't accidentally request from a library that's not in SEAL. And if you ever want to double check that one of these libraries is a SEAL participant, you can just head to the directory and search for them. And I just want to show you one last thing, which is how journal titles will look in the search results screen, because it's a little different than books. So I'm just going to do a search for JAMA, which is the Journal from the American Medical Association. Let's just choose this one. So you can see from the results, the way journal issues appear, it really varies from library to library, depending on how they catalog their journals. Some include volume and issue information. Some don't have call numbers and they have it over in local availability. So when you're searching for a specific article and you know the journal volume and issue, you might have to go to their catalog and actually look through their results just to double check before requesting that they have the issue that you're looking for. And sometimes it will appear on this page and it'll be in the call number or the availability, but sometimes it's not. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about requesting. So let's just say that I have a library patron who is very interested in the science of motivation and they want to read the book Drive by Daniel Pink. And you might have noticed that this is pretty much the only book that's in my lending and borrowing request histories. It's our favorite test book for ILO requests. So the first step would be to check your own library and then your own library system if you're a Mid-Hudson or RCLS member, just to verify that it's not available through those methods first, and then you would move on to SEAL. So once I've determined that I can't get the book from my library, I can do a search in SEAL. I'm just going to search quickly using a complete title search. The book's full title is it'll get me results a lot quicker because just using the word drive, as we saw with Hudson, it would bring in thousands of results. So several copies of the book show up, and when this happens, I try to look for the one that has the most records attached to it. So once you find the book you need, you can click the request button, and this will take you to our ILO request form. The display will show your requester information, so just verify quickly that everything looks good and it's accurate and up to date. And fill in a need by date for the item if you have one. This can let the lending library know if it's a rush or anything like that. And there's also an optional note field for things like recording a patron or leaving a note to the lending library. And if you do want to use this to record a patron, please avoid using any identifiable information. A lot of people will use library card barcodes in this field, and that's a good way to preserve patron anonymity and help you find their information quicker on your end. And these notes will only be available to be seen by you and the lending library. So since we're requesting a print book, I'm going to choose no for is this a request for an article. But if you were trying to request an article, You can hit yes, and the necessary citation fields will open for the request. And I'm going to touch on what these two options, CCL and CCG, mean a little bit later. Okay, so the next step is to choose a lender. And the system doesn't choose a lender automatically. You kind of have to decide on a good library to request from. And one easy way to do this is to double check the status of the item. So just make sure that it says available, checked in, on shelf, or something similar. And as you can see, the public library system, it will show up which one it belongs to. So that's how you can kind of double check to make sure you're not requesting from your own system or something like that. So if it says anything like checked out, in library use only, on hold, missing, or something like that, it's probably not available to loan. So that's just something to always pay close attention to. And we do recommend to just try and request first from libraries that are similar to your library type. And that's just the way that we can prevent any one library from receiving too many requests. So just for example, if you're a public library, try, if it's possible, to request from a public library first. This is a chart that we have which suggests the order to try and choose requesting libraries. And of course, this is more of a guideline. It's not absolutely mandatory. It's just kind of a suggested way to, again, limit making sure that one library doesn't receive a disproportionate amount of requests. And if you ever open this drop-down menu and there's nothing there, it just means that there are no participating libraries in SEAL that have that item. So once you've chosen a library, and I'm going to choose Sunny Lark, you can click Submit. An email at this point will automatically be sent to the lender requesting the item, and you will receive a copy of that confirmation email, and that's going to look like this. It includes the bibliographic information of the book, and this is the assigned ILL number that it receives. And it also includes a link right here to cancel the request if you need to. And you can also cancel a request from inside your account if you had to see a request placed by your library. And that option is right here under the action bar. And again, you can search by ILL number or by the lending library if you need to find the request quicker. So at this point, you would basically just wait until you hear back from the lender to see if they're willing to fill your request. And they have 5 business days to respond. After 3 days, they get sent a reminder email. And if they don't respond within those 5 days, the request will expire and you'll receive a notice that it's expired, and then you'll just have to try submitting it to a different library. But if they say yes, you will receive a confirmation email that notifies you and provides both the shipping method that the item was sent with and the contact information of the lending library. And that's what that email will look like. It's a little small, but and so if you ever need to get in touch with them, the email to contact them is available right there in the email. If you respond to this message from the SEAL ILL system, it actually does get sent back to us at Southeastern. And it's not that I mind receiving your emails, but I just want to make sure that you always get them, quickly, and that it gets to the right place. So if you lose their email somehow, you're not sure, you can always look them up in the directory and find a way to contact them. So once the ILL item has arrived at your library, you can then update the item status in SEAL to received, and then on your end of things, you can check it out to your home patron. And I think I mentioned this before, but it is really important to keep a record of your SEAL transactions separate from the actual system. So a lot of people will use their library's ILS to track their interlibrary loan materials. And one method you can use for doing this is to create a temporary bib record for the item and then check it out to your patron there. And some people will have dummy barcodes that they use for their ILL numbers, for their ILL materials, and then they go ahead and they'll delete that temporary record once the ILL request has been sent back to the lending library. In your method, it's really up to you how you keep track, and it can vary depending on the capabilities of your specific ILS. Some people also create spreadsheets of items that are borrowed and lent, and some people also print off requests, like a physical copy of the email request, and they keep that in their records. And we recommend that you keep track of the item, the patron, the lending library, the due date, and the delivery method of the item in your records. Okay, so if you wanted to receive an item in Seal, you would head back to the borrowing request history and then just locate the item and hit received. And as you can see, it'll update in the status bar and it'll actually timestamp it and show it what day it was received and in what time. So once you receive an item, 2 new item statuses appear: request a renewal and return the item. So if a patron ever needs more time with an item, you can request a renewal using this option. Again, you have the option to type in any notes relating to your request. Some people might use this to say how much more time they need or maybe why they need more time, but again, it's completely optional if you include a note or not. Clicking submit will generate an email to the lending library asking them if you can have a renewal, and if they agree, an email will be sent back to you with the new updated due date. And this is an example of the email that you'd receive confirming that renewal has been approved, and it'll show you the new due date. You can also always email the lending library directly to ask for renewal. Once you hit that received option in your borrowing account, an option will appear on their side of things, which actually lets them edit the due date of the material. And you will also receive a reminder email from the Seal system when your due date is approaching. And then once a patron has returned an item to your library, you can update the status again to return. A screen will appear with a drop-down menu for delivery methods, as well as a notes option if needed. Some people use this to record additional information about the method they used. So for example, say UPS, some people might say sent or something like that. And the way that an item was originally sent to you is often a good indicator of how you can return it. So for example, if it was sent via a system courier or through the Empire Library Delivery System, it's likely that you have that as an option to use as your return method. But if you're ever unsure of the delivery method you should use, you can check with a library manager or the ILL systems manager at your system. And you can also contact me if you have any questions. So fill these in and click submit. And the lender will be able to check the status on their end of things and see that their item is on its way home. And once they have checked in the seal book, then on your side as the borrower, the ILL transaction will be complete. I'm going to just completely switch perspectives and cover the lending side of things. So I'm just going to start from the exact moment that a borrower places a request for an item from your library. And once that request is placed, you will receive an email that gives you the option to lend it. And we do ask that you always indicate whether or not you can fill a request. And that's a good way for us to keep track of how many items are being lent, and it also will let the other library know if they need to submit it to a new library or not. And this is an example of the initial email that you receive from Seal when someone requests an item from you. It contains the bibliographic information along with who has requested it, their mailing address, and their contact information. And at the bottom of the email, you actually have the option to say yes or no right here. And if you click this, it'll actually link back to the Seal system. You can also supply that answer in your account as well under CL request received by your library. And you have fill or not fill. So if you can't fill a request by any chance, if you select not fill, you get a screen that asks you why you can't lend the item. And this information can be useful for the borrowing library as they continue to try and find a lender. Sometimes people will use this to say the item isn't available now, but try again and at a different date. So that can be some helpful, but it is optional to add a note. And if you are able to lend it, you can just hit fill. I do recommend actually having the item in hand before you commit to lending it. Just in case there's ever any issues with locating it in your stacks, you don't want to indicate that you can lend it only to find out that you actually don't have it. So again, there's the notes option. You can include information on your delivery method. This is where you indicate the due date and the length of time that you give them. That's kind of up to each individual library. I recommend about 6 weeks just because delivery can sometimes take up to a week on both ends of things. So you want to make sure that they have a good chunk of time with the book. Let's see, so let's choose a due date. And then you would just choose your method. If you received a request for an article and not a book, you can scan or download the item and send it as a PDF through email. And if you are accessing an e-journal or something like that to download an article, just be sure that this is something that's permissible with your vendor. And if you're ever unsure or you suspect that it's not something that you can lend, you can always decline the request if needed. And your method for checking the ILL item out to get sent to the borrowing library, these methods vary depending on your library's individual procedures. One method some people use is to add the borrowing library as a temporary or ILL patron in your ILS and then check the item out to them there. And again, many people also print off the SEER request and keep a physical copy. As with borrowing, you should keep track of things like the actual item, the borrowing library, the due date, and the method of delivery. And we also recommend that you record somewhere the date that the item is actually received back by you. And you can see if a library has received your item by checking the status bar. And once they have received it, then an option will appear here to edit the due date. See, I don't have a sample one up, but it'll show up, it'll say edit due date, and once you click on it, then you can just change the recorded due date, and it'll show up on their set of things, and they'll have a new due date. The only emails that are generated by a status change are the renewals. But as far as receiving and things like that, that just shows up in the status. You don't get an additional email for that. If the borrowing library requests a renewal, you will receive an email asking if you're willing to extend the due date. And you can respond to this request directly from here by hitting approve or deny, or you can actually do it directly from the email. And this is an example of what that email looks like. So you can just, it'll have the ILL number, the title, and you can just click here, approved or deny. If you are willing to extend the due date, you can just hit approve, type in the new due date, and any notes that you might have about the renewal. And again, they will get the email with the new due date on their end, and it'll also show up in their borrowing request histories. Once you receive an ILL material back from the borrowing library, you'll need to update the status and seal. Click check item back in, and this will just complete the transaction and assure the borrowing library that you have received their library. And then you can check the item back in and return it to yourself. And that will kind of complete your Seal ILL transaction. The last thing that I want to show you in this demo is statistics. We actually have a great tool in Seal that allows users to generate data on items that are borrowed and lent. So if you want to access these, first head again to My Account, and you can click on Link to Library Borrower Stats or Library Lender Stats, depending on the information that you need. Let's say I want to know how many items that I've borrowed. You first enter a desired date range for your data. So I'm just going to do from the beginning of the year until today. It'll provide you with raw numbers and percentages on the total number of requests that are placed, how many of your requests were filled, how many were not filled, how many expired, and things like that. The breakdown of requests section will actually show your data by the library system that you've requested from and by item type. I don't have many groups listed here because I've mostly only created and filled fake requests. However, you would probably see a combination of school systems, public library systems, and the Sending Alert group. And these statistics can be a really helpful tool if you have to report on your Seal usage for any kind of annual reports. And it also lets you know, you can spot some trends in your borrowing activities. You can see who you're requesting from most frequently, what types of items you're requesting from, and that can be really useful. And then, of course, if you want to see what you've lent, it's kind of the same process. You would just go through and put in the dates and it'll split the information. And I would also like to quickly show you where you can find some additional resources when you get started using SEAL. So if you look at the bottom right hand of the page, there's a link here for training resources. And these will take you to a LibGuide that has some different resources available. This includes the SEAL manual. And this has a link table of contents. So if you're looking for a specific answer, you can click on it and it should take you right to the specific part of the manual that you're looking for. We also have short training videos on different aspects of the system. They're about 5 to 7 minutes each. So if there's ever any questions you have, these provide a little bit of information on how to do things. There's also a page on delivery. This one's a little bit in progress, but it has different sections on different delivery methods, so a little more on ELD, some best practices for mailing through typical shipping methods. And I'm missing our CLS right now, but it'll be up soon, and just a little bit on how to use the system careers. There's also an FAQ. If you're an Iliad library, this has some information. We have an Iliad add-on to kind of incorporate SEAL procedures into your pre-existing Iliad procedures. And then we have kind of an additional tools page, which is a little bit of a catch-all for some different things that might be useful. Some copyright resources. If you want to put a link to the SEAL catalog on your library's page, you can save one of these logos. This is a copy of that PowerPoint that I started the training with. This has like a list of codes if you want to indicate that an item isn't available. So it'll say like checked in, available, things like that. And these kind of provide codes that suggest that an item probably isn't available, and that this is a copy of that lender chart I showed you. And we also have a copy of the regional ILO codes and procedures, which I'd like to touch on quickly next. And these are linked here, but they're also available on our webpage, on the Southeastern webpage. So if you head there, sunnylark.org, click services, go down to resource sharing, interlibrary loan resources, and the PDFs are linked there too. So the code and the procedures, they provide some broad guidelines to resource sharing, and they also provide some specific procedures for borrowing and lending. And these are updated and reviewed every year as needed by Southeastern's Regional Interlibrary Loan Committee. I'd first just like to touch on the code. This provides some overall guidelines to resource sharing, and our code was actually adopted from the Interlibrary Loan Code for the United States with explanatory supplement, which is a mouthful. You can see that we have a few regional provisions on the first page of this code. One of the provisions is that libraries should request from like systems first, as I touched on earlier. Another important provision in this code is that there's no fees associated with borrowing items in SEAL. And the code also states that the Library Resources Council is going to maintain this virtual union catalog and will coordinate SEAL. And so if you scroll to the first page, you'll actually see the attached interlibrary loan code. And this has some broad definitions about interlibrary loan, things like purpose, scope, definitions, and it also has different responsibilities for the different, for if you're a borrowing library or if you're a lending library. And it's really useful to have this explanatory supplement because it kind of tells you why you do certain things a certain way. Our regional interlibrary loan procedures provide some guidelines on how to borrow and lend materials, and it's split up into procedures for the requesting library and then procedures for the lending library. And this document is really useful to read through before you start using SEAL. It can be really helpful if you ever come up with a tricky situation. Say, for example, you got a book through SEAL and your patron lost it. These procedures provide some guidance as to what you should do and who would be responsible for the cost of that book and things like that. But I don't want to go through every procedure, but I just want to take note of a few important ones that haven't been covered yet in the training. And many of these procedures, they will actually reference the part of the US code that they're from. So if you have any questions on it, you can kind of refer back to that code and it'll have the explanation attached to it, which tells you why it's that way, why we tell you to do that, basically. So the borrowing library in IL transactions has certain responsibilities, such as notifying the lender if an item hasn't arrived in a reasonable amount of time, and a reasonable would probably be 2 to 3 weeks. And the borrower is likewise responsible for an item from the minute that it leaves the lender's shelf until it's placed back on it. So if there's any damage to a book or a patron loses it or something like that, then it's up to the borrowing library to reimburse the lender. And if you choose to, based on your own individual ILL policies, you can bill, your patron to recover the money for that book. The borrowing library also has to respond to any recall notices. If they get an email from the lending library that they need the book back right away, they have to return it. And we also, these code or procedures also suggest requesting renewals in a timely manner so that if the renewal request is denied, the item can be returned before its due date, so it won't be late. And then if you scroll through a little bit, you'll kind of see the procedures for the lending library. And lenders have the option to submit a bill for lost or damaged items, but if you do submit a bill, they should be sent no later than a year after the item's initial due date. It's also the responsibility of the lender to be aware of any content licensing agreements and how they affect ILL. So they need to make sure if someone requests a journal article that they actually have permission to share something like that with their vendor. And it's the responsibility of both parties to always package loan material safely to prevent any damage or loss in shipping. So if you ever have any questions or concerns about these coded procedures or they're not clear or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So I'd like to now just hop back into the PowerPoint quickly just to cover a few more things, but we're in the home stretch. So, okay, so this is just a link back to those coded procedures, and I will be sending out a copy of this PowerPoint. It has some useful links, and it's also, as I showed you, it's also linked to on our LibGuide page. So I would just like to very, very, very quickly touch on copyright as it applies to interlibrary loan, but just as a disclaimer, I have no legal training. I'm just a humble librarian. This section is derived from a lot of resources ILL experts have produced on the issue of copyright. And if you have any questions or if anything's not clear, I can direct you to some more thorough resources available on the subject. And for the most part, copyright is not something you're going to have to worry about when you use SEAL. A lot of people, as I mentioned, use SEAL to share physical items such as books, DVDs, and CDs. And that's completely permissible under U.S. copyright law by something that's known as the first sale doctrine. And this law stipulates that individuals are allowed to sell, display, dispose, or lend their purchased physical copies of copyrighted material at their own discretion. So this is how libraries are able to hold book sales, read books, build elaborate book displays if they want to. However, as I mentioned before, SEAL can be used to share journal articles, and libraries have some special legal allowances that permit them to send articles via interlibrary loan. There are a few regulations and limitations when doing so, so I just want to mention those quickly. One of the most important things is that any article copy a patron receives, whether it's physical or electronic, it has to be used for the purposes of private study, scholarship, or research. It cannot be used for any commercial reasons. The copy is also considered to be the property of the patron and therefore should not be shared or distributed with anybody else. It is also required that a notice of copyright accompanies the ILL article. Most articles already include a notice of copyright, especially if you download them from an e-journal. However, there is a standard copyright notice you can use if it does not. I linked to this notice in the presentation, but it's also available on the SEAL LibGuide under that additional resources section. One of the other stipulations in copyright law is that you cannot request so much of a journal that it would substitute for a sale or a subscription of that item. In the law, this is referred to as an aggregate quantity. However, when the law was originally established, it was really unclear how much of a work this actually constituted. So in 1978, what are known as the Cantu Guidelines were published to clarify unclear stipulations around these quantities and provide some precise numbers that would help people avoid accidentally violating copyright. So they decided on what's known as the Rule of Five, and this only applies to articles that have been published in the last 5 years. And this rule specifies that no more than 5 articles can be requested from the same journal per year. And this is by library, not by patron. So if a 6th request is made from a specific journal in one calendar year, you have to request copyright permissions and then pay a fine. Permissions can be requested from a site called the Copyright Clearance Center. And if you do request any articles that would fall under these Cantu guidelines, just make sure to keep track of the journal title and the date of the article's publication. It's recommended to keep all of these records for at least 3 years. So that's why you have that drop-down option for CCL or CCG when you make a periodical request in SEAL. CCL means that the item is older than 5 years and falls under copyright law. And while you still can't request an unlimited amount from these journals, you're not strictly bound to the Rule of Five. And choosing the CCG option just means that it was published within the last 5 years and falls under Cantu. It's also important to note that license agreements with companies take precedent over copyright law. And as I mentioned before, copyright will rarely be an issue if you're using SEAL, but it is something to be aware of if you ever do request a journal article or you receive a request for a journal article. And just as an aside, if there ever a journal article you need that's related to something like consumer health or medicine, Southeastern can actually get that for you at no additional cost. This is a service called the Medical Information Services Program, which is funded by the state. And you can submit your article request on a referral form, which is located on the SEAL homepage on the bottom right. And it's also on the Southeastern website at sunnylark.org/MISP. This is a really good option if there's ever a medical article that you can't, for whatever reason, access through SEAL. And that referral form is also linked right here. I want to really thank everyone for being here today and for being so willing to share their resources through SEAL. It's your work and generosity that does make SEAL possible. Oh, yep, and we have recorded this webinar, so we will be sending out a link, and I'll also include a copy of the PowerPoint. And if you have any questions on what we talked about today, you can give me a call at 845-883-9065, extension 115, or you can just email me directly. My email is pretty easy to remember. It's just kelsey@sunnylark.org.